render this raging extrovert speechless. One was when I was sitting across from a student for lunch up in Bears Den. I asked him, what is a fear he carries these days? Being a priest gives permission to ask those deeper questions, not that it has to be answered. Looking right at me in all seriousness, he replied, my biggest fear is going bald. True story. Yes, I was rendered speechless. All I could muster was a very weak, well, it's not that bad. Things like this can cover up reality for me, and to you. Pretend games we used to play as kids, but now still as adults. For sure, it's okay to work out. Keeps us healthy, right? But sometimes we do it to look good only. It's okay to wear clothes that make us look skinnier. When I was a little heavier, my advice from a lot of people was, don't wear stripes that go that way, Gary. Makeup. I've used it up here in the sanctuary. Some of you know that. For some, it covers up blemishes. I had taken a face plant on the sidewalk of St. Louis 2 days before our biggest celebration of Christmas, with 1,000 people looking at my swollen, black-eyed face. And so I asked Kathy Denault, do you have anything I could borrow? So as not to be too big of a distraction, and I put Clinique all over my face. It really is good stuff. All that is really just fine, I suspect, unless we let it intrude into our way of being with each other. Unless we use it unconsciously to find ourselves going out of our way to get attention because we think we need that flash and that exaggeration and that drama to get that longed-for attention. It's all just fine, I think, unless we fear rejection. Rejection for being honest about ourselves, or for being not honest enough in this particular friendship we are concerned about. It's all just fine unless my brand of crazy and healthy, my deformities and my divinities, the grotesque in me and the grace, is anything less than at the service of the deep mystery of being human in all of its stages. The deep mystery of being human with all of its daily struggles. This sacred text today is the context of this little Triduum of Halloween, All Saints and All Souls, Dia de los Muertos. And it takes us, this little Triduum takes us to a different vantage point in all this. If I am to love God and my neighbor and myself, then what is love if it is not learning how to be real? Learning how to be real with one another and to myself and to God. Yes, we even pretend to God. Remember the story of the publican and the sinner? They both walk into the synagogue to pray. The publican makes his way to the front, probably to be seen. And all he did there in his prayer to God was recount his successes and how awesome he is, and how he's kept the rules. The sinner in exchange was in the back pew, the back pew. And his whole prayer was, God, I'm not even worthy to be here. I'm a sinner. I've missed the mark way too often. I've failed at so many things. I'm just a sinner. And you and I both know which prayer God received. The one who was real. The one who wasn't pretending. We all want to look good to others, right? I saw a sign once that wrote, instead of John, I call my bathroom Jim. It sounds way better when I say I went to the gym first thing this morning. We all want to look good to each other. And so we fake out God. We fake out God. We try too hard to please others and God. Why? Because somewhere along the way, and it pays off to figure out why and when, somewhere along the way, likely we were shamed. We were shamed for being who we are, who we really are. We were rejected in a way, belittled in a way that cut deep into our psyche. And from that day forward, we're trying to hide who we are for fear of unacceptability. No wonder we put our tail between our legs and wander off and away when we're hurt. We begin to believe that we are not lovable, even likable, just as we are. And so we hide, we pretend, and we work too hard to be seen as only our best and perfect. But that's not what love does. Prayer should be being our most real, strengths and weaknesses, weeds and wheat, good and bad. The key word there is and. Both and. That's real. I said 2 weeks ago in this pulpit, the gospel question 2 weeks ago was a tough one. The gospel question was, what do you hate the most about yourself? What do you dislike the most, the very most about yourself? And some people took that to heart. And I got messages later that night and even the next day for people who thought about it through the day. I asked, what do you hate about yourself the most? And I made the case, I hope, standing on the Word of God, that all belongs to. It all belongs to who I am and as I am, which is the only way I'm ever going to find out that I'm loved as who I am, as I am. The only way I'll ever find out if that's true is if I can be real enough to show both and, even to myself. If we ever going to be who we are, really, to let people see that. I was at a dinner party one time, and this guy I was just getting to know a little bit pulled me aside and he said, do you mind if I give you a little way that maybe you could be better at preaching? Well, I said, no, I don't mind. I mean, obviously I wasn't speaking emotionally. And I did get a little defensive. But I got to tell you, what he said to me changed my preaching forever. He said, Father Gary, I think your preaching would be way more powerful and effective if you were more vulnerable, if you were more real. I never forgot that. And it's affected every talk I've given since, once I came to terms with it, actually. His name was Glenn. Thanks, Glenn. To love my God is to become more real, more transparent, more vulnerable. When I go to pray, and even when I stand here in front of you, like this, even here this morning when I gather with you just for Mass, even with you. Is it any wonder, my friends, is it any wonder that the first thing we do here, and we do it every Mass, is to say, Lord, have mercy, Christ, have mercy, Lord, have mercy, which is to say, I am not as independent and as self-sufficient and as altogether and as perfect as I would like to think I am. I have to hear myself saying those words. Mass is honest. The rituals of this Eucharist almost force us into realizing that I'm not the man, you're not the woman you'd like to think you are sometimes. And when we start like we did today, and some Masses start regularly with, is, I confess to Almighty God and to you, my brothers and sisters, that I have sinned through my own fault. No, it wasn't my wife's or husband's fault. It wasn't my boss's fault. It was my own fault that I sinned and failed. And I'm saying it out loud to you, and I'm saying it out loud to God, because the church knows that has to be in the mix somewhere, that I'm not as independent, self-sufficient, and perfect as I would like to think I am. That's what it means to love God, for sure, but also to love my neighbor. It's to admit that I'm not as perfect and right all the time as I would like you to think I am. And to love myself is to stand naked before my own mirror, in my own self-reflection, and say yes to everything I see there. To say yes to everything I see there in my own mirror, and in the mirror that your thoughts about me make real to me, like what Glenn said to me that night at that dinner party. Broadsided, but forever better, I hope. Yes, to get to this, I will have to let myself hear your criticism of me. Being real to God, being real to my neighbor, being real to my own self. Only then will I discover that I am truly loved, even when I do this, whatever this is, that I am loved just as I am. I'm acceptable just as I am. And I have to tell you, this is the genius of confession. The genius of confession for us. And I've been with so many students over the years who have asked me, Gary Brown, their priest, to be there when they tell their parents that they are gay. It's never easy. Oftentimes it's terrible. But it's always, always powerful, and even ultimately joyful. Maybe not for the parents for a long time, for some of them, if ever. But can I tell you the joy that shines on their son's or daughter's face when they finally tell their mom and dad something they've been hiding for their lifetime up until that moment? We all, without exception, have some coming out to do. In one way or another, we all have some coming out to do. So what do I like most about Halloween? It's going to sound ironic to say this, perhaps, but what I like most about Halloween is it's just honest. That tonight, later on tonight, when the kids are trick-or-treating, and we adults are made up in our own costumes ourselves, perhaps, we all who play along on Halloween, covering up who we really are, that's how we really live. So ironically, there's something almost incredibly honest about tonight. We all, not always, but most of the time, we live together this way, hiding who we really are. The first day of the Little Triduum showing on the outside how we live on the inside. My friends, becoming real is the name of the game. The human game. To get there, we will be fighting lots of fears and lots of rejection possibilities and hurt. But if we've ever had the glimpse of that, if there's ever a time we've ever been real, even if it was in confession, wherever it was, somewhere along the way, you know how good it feels, how liberating it feels. It's almost like our whole body untenses. We know how good it is to be that real. We've tasted it. The world is full of fake people. You and I have been among them. But the best way to change fake people is to be real ourselves. In the light of this gospel, I encourage you to set your compass to the real. Don't even think about beating yourself up for hiding or being fake in your past. Don't even give it a second thought to be ashamed of the hiding you've done in the past, not for a second. But rather, just look to your future. Your future. And see if you can try to be more real tomorrow than you were yesterday. That would be an amazing life to have lived. And I mean, live.